We do it. Nutrition is your new addiction.
Hey, how are you guys? Oh, this is gonna be an interesting one today.
Go on and work it, lady. Yeah, that's how you work it, lady. It's never no, or maybe this is how you get it, baby. Work.
I am very happy to share this information with you. It is part of a journey that I am on, and I wanted to share it with you, ladies. Let me start by saying who this information is for. If you have ever been kind of on the fence about the HPV vaccine, if you're just trying to figure out what's best for you and your family, maybe you have a little bit of vaccine hesitancy. You're a little bit, nervous about vaccines. You don't want to not get them, but you're a little afraid of them at the same time. And you just want more information and you would like to hear official information from all of our health officials as well as my personal experience going through this journey as someone who did not get it in childhood, this is for you. Let me share with you who this information is not for. If you are like, a just complete person who's like, you know what, I've made my mind up about this. I will never get a vaccine in my life. I think, it's some kind of conspiracy or something like that. Then this might not be information that you care about. And it might be best if you click off now. The ladies in my community are very savvy, they're intelligent, they are always interested in learning more information from trusted resources and examining real life data that our government officials and our healthcare professionals do have and that do share with us very transparently. Um, but I do understand if you've ever been on the fence because I have, and I'm going to talk to you about that. Okay. So, anyway, this episode, multiple reasons every woman and child should get the HPV vaccine. So, if you guys remember a couple of months back, I shared on my Instagram that I was getting the HPV vaccine as an adult. And I was like, hey, just letting you know, the age for the HPV vaccine has been moved up to age 45. I shared a couple of reasons why, and I shared that I had received my first dose of the vaccine. I have now received my second dose of the vaccine, feeling pretty good. I'm really happy that this is now covered for insurance for people, more than just in adolescence and even over the age of 25, because this is a cancer preventative. Vaccines are one of the best ways that we can actually prevent cancers. Okay. So, let me talk a little bit first about my journey. And this is a lot of information today, guys. So, this probably is going to be a lot. It's probably going to be a longer one. You may have to stop this at some point and pick it up again later. I'm going to try not to make it too long, but I do want to give you as much information as I possibly can. I have done a lot of research on this personally. I've been digging. Up so much stuff on National Institutes of Health, CDC, and the World Health Organization to share with you guys the most credible and safe information to help you make your own personal decision. You don't have to do what I'm doing. Again, this is just if you're someone like me who was searching for answers. I remember years ago looking this stuff up online. I couldn't understand research studies. I didn't know how to really fully read a research study yet. And I, would go on YouTube. I would listen to podcasts trying to figure out what I wanted to do for myself and my family. So, again, that's the whole point of this. So I hope you can take it in the spirit of that. And I'm saying all this because I have been getting some resistance lately. A couple of months ago, I shared an episode on essential oils, and I got a lot of really nasty DMs from some of those in my community that I had really respected. The approach was just really rude and condescending, and I didn't appreciate it very much. So again, if you don't appreciate the information, if you don't believe the information, you don't have to. Okay. But what's not going to happen is you're not going to tell me what I can and cannot post. I don't tell you or anybody else what to post on their social media. So this is, my business and my passion projects, and this is what I'm going to do. Okay. So, okay, let's get into it. So, let me just kind of first again start with my journey. So, when the HPV vaccines came out, I was kind of like an adolescent, but I really can't remember exactly how old I was. I was definitely underage. And so because of that, there was a lot of confusion. It was kind of marketed at that point as, hey, if your kid is having sex, they need this. And my parent, like many parents out there, reasoned, hey, well, my kid is not having sex. That's not something we promote in our household. They don't need this. Unfortunately, that was wrong information. We're going to discuss in this episode's reasons that you should get the HPV vaccine, even if you're not sexually active. There are more ways to get HPV besides sex, and that is what the current research is starting to suggest now. It is still in the preliminary stages, but this is what they're starting to understand more now. So that is why, even if you have a small child, even if you're an older woman, whatever the case, it is still going to be worth it for you to really consider getting the vaccine. So again, at that age, of course, you're a minor, so you're just like, I don't know, whatever, I don't need that shot. Hooray! You leave the doctor's office, you are feeling good. You're like, whatever, avoided that shot. Didn't want that anyway because you're young and you have no idea about this stuff yet, right? So that was my experience. The vaccine was declined at that point, for those reasons. And again, people were just trying to do the best that they can at that time. That it's a lot, for any mom to have to make these decisions for her child. So we don't need to have any like anger towards our parents about it. But it's just something. So anyway, fast forward a couple years, I'm still a young person, and I'm dating, I'm still carrying my life in such a way, I did not, engage in any type of premarital premarital intimacy or anything like that. But then the time did come where I was, gonna get married. And so I took my little big girl trip my first time, going to the gynecologist, said, hey, I'm going to get married. I'm going to become sexually active. What do I need? Tell me all the things. And so the vaccine was presented to me again at that time. And because again, I was still young, because I had unfortunately gone down a rabbit hole of kind of mostly well-meaning information, but also misinformation at that time. I had health problems earlier on, with my autoimmune condition. And so I was kind of on high alert. I was, thinking, well, maybe I got this autoimmune condition because of something in the healthcare field I was exposed to earlier. And maybe it was this and maybe it was that. And you read all these wonky things online, and, you get down a rabbit hole of misinformation. So at that point in my life, that's where I was at. I was stuck in that. I was never completely against the healthcare organization, but I was like, I had my little things that I felt, maybe I knew a little bit better on for my personal situation. And so I at that time was like, well, give me everything else, but I don't want that shot, and some of it too was probably because I was so young and just didn't want a shot. You know what I mean? I mean, who wants a shot? It hurts, it stinks, but hey, whatever. So, I was thinking, I have not had premarital sex. The person I am going to be marrying has not either, to my knowledge. But, then again, ladies, you do have to always have that little question mark in the back of your head. I mean, you really don't know these days. While, we love our spouses and loved ones, sometimes you don't know. I mean, how many women have been in relationships, for decades, and they found out their husband has a whole nother family somewhere. So, you never just can be too sure. But that was my thinking at the time. Hey, we're both committed to each other. We are both, gonna be with each other for the first time. So there's no risk of HPV. I don't need that shot again. Who wants to get a shot? Nope, I'm good. And I have to say, I can remember the doctor being like, you should really get this. There's many other reasons you should get HPV and this and that and this and that and genital warts. And that was the only thing, like, hey, warts, warts, warts. And that was just kind of what was stuck in my head. I'm thinking, well, I never seen any warts on this person's hand. I never seen it. No, I'm good. Again, naive, misinformed, and really wasn't thinking my decision through long term. So I did, on that occasion, on my own accord, I declined the vaccine. Okay, I declined the vaccine. So, hey, you live and you learn. But there's lots of women out there in this same situation. I have conversations with women all the time. And, even just like 3 weeks ago, I was speaking with someone who, a mom, and said the same thing. Oh, yeah, I didn't get the HPV vaccine for my daughter because, I know she's not sexually active, so she doesn't need it. Again, it's not really a good idea. And again, as we go through this and we get into the meat of this, I am going to be sharing some real heavy um, evidences as to why, based on the research studies and everything. So just hang tight because the bombshells are coming. So again, let's focus on this. Sex is not just the most common way that you can get HPV. They initially start vaccinating young ones at early as age 9 because you're coming into contact with lots of people. Now let's go into that a little bit further. Boys especially, are key to all of this because little boys, they touch a lot of things, and then they also then have to touch their penis to go to the bathroom. So if they picked HPV up on a surface, then they touch their penis to go to the bathroom. Now that HPV virus is living on the penis. It might not ever turn into genital warts, but it has still invaded the tissue and it is still communicable and passable onto someone through sex. Okay. Or they could just keep spreading it by the hand, playing with their friends, grabbing a basketball, in the gym locker room. This is the common ways that this is spread besides just sex. And vaccinating little boys is especially important because it helps with herd immunity. Boys, for a lot of these things, are often called super spreaders, just for the fact of they have tissue. The penis is still a different type of tissue than like the skin, our skin that's like on our hands and everything. So it is much more absorbent, and they are coming into contact with that tissue far more often than women are, because all of our soft tissue is inside. Our vaginas are much more absorbent than a penis is. So that's why it's very important for us, especially, to always be getting our PAPs and everything like that. But yeah. So again, think about it this way too. HPV is testable by getting a PAP done. However, you can still have HPV invading other areas of the body, the hand tissues, other things like that, and still have HPV, but you won't have any tests for that. So there's no other test for HPV besides a PAP. I'm hoping in the future that there will be more tests for HPV, but again, it's so common and most people do get over it that, it might not be necessary to do that. But again, just know that just because you know, have not had an abnormal PAP does not mean that you don't have HPV, because HPV is still able to invade other tissues that are not tested. So, you could, maybe you never got it, in your cervix, but maybe it has invaded another body tissue and there's no test for that. So again, that is the reason why we just have to take this information in, okay? So, I am going to start, let's see, where do I want to start? There's so much information to cover. Let me just jump into this one then. Let's do this. I'm going to share this screenshot from National Institutes of Health, PubMed, and I'm going to show you what they have recently published. There was a follow up to this article. This one was actually published in 2020. Um, And I will share that because I think it is going to be impactful for you to see it on the screen. You can also, look it up yourself, but I think this is going to be very helpful. Okay, so let's do this. So non-sexual HPV transmission and the role of vaccination for a better future. So I remember when I first talked about this on my Instagram that you can get HPV, it is plausible. Are there there's some studies that do say yes, this is possible. They are newer and not as many of those studies done yet because this is a new avenue. But it is a thing. And when I posted on my Instagram about this, I had multiple people DM me saying, "Hey, no, you can only get that through sex." Most of those weren't, malicious, mean questions, but it does prove a point that, hey, this is what a lot of us are thinking, and it's not true. Before these studies were published, it wasn't true then. It's just now we have more information on it, which again, all the more reason to always be kind of following the scientific approach. When the healthcare officials give us these, things, go ahead and hop on the bandwagon and get it done. That way, we're protected. So, non-sexual HPV transmission and the role of vaccination for a better future. Human papillomavirus HPV belongs to the papillomaviridae family and are epithelitic, infecting squamous, epithelial skin, and mucosae. HPV is estimated to be the cause of 99% of cervical cancers. There is no evidence of significant genetic predisposition for cervical cancer. 90% of anal cancers, 65% of vaginal cancers, and that it can include uterine as well. And for the anal, that can also be colorectal as well. Um, 50% of vulvar cancers and 45 to 90% of orthopharyngeal cancers. That is cancers of the throat, also cancers of the neck and head. And we're going to talk more on this. So don't make sure you listen to all this because there's even now emerging evidence that this could even be a thing contributing to breast cancers as well, which we'll touch on that later on in the episode. Okay. So the route of HPV transmission is primarily through skin to skin to mucosa contact. So skin to skin, and especially if it is a mucus area, a mucus containing area. Sexual transmission is the most documented. Okay, so this is sexual transmission is the main way you get it. Why? Because when you're having sex, you are exposed to soft tissue, your vagina being soft tissue, the penis being soft tissue, but you are also exposed to mucus. Okay, so these are where it can really live and thrive. However, skin to skin is not just talking about vaginal skin to penile skin. It is hand to hand and beyond. So let's get more into it. So, excuse me. Sexual transmission is the most documented, but there have been studies uh, suggesting non-sexual courses. The horizontal transfer of HPV includes fomites, fingers, and the mouth, and skin contact other than sexual. Self-inoculation is described in studies as a potential HPV transmission route, as it was certified in female virgins and in children with genital warts, low risk HPV, without a personal history of sexual abuse. Vertical transmission from mother to child is another HPV transfer course. Several studies have emphasized the possibility of infection through amniotic fluid or the placenta or via contact with maternal genital mucosa during natural childbirth. Okay, so let's talk about that. These are other ways that you can get HPV. Okay, these new studies are suggesting. All right, so we're not just talking about sex anymore. And this is another reason why the age has now been pushed out to 45. Okay, several studies emphasize, let's see. Waterborne transmission of HPV has never been demonstrated. However, HPV DNA has been detected in water environments. Routine hygiene measures are proven to be inefficient in preventing HPV transmission. So why you not gonna, once it's invaded your hand tissues or whatever tissue of your body, this is not going to wash away. All right. As the studies which have evaluated samples of HPV on contaminated medical equipment after standard disinfection have found them to still be positive. So I want you to digest everything that I just said. There's some words in here that I want to give you the definitions of so that you can understand. The first word that we came across when we were talking about the non sexual transmission was the word formites. What are formites? Formites refer to objects that can carry and spread disease and infectious agents. Okay, so lots of things can be formites. Some of the things mentioned are contaminated vehicles, shovels, clothings, bowls, buckets, tacks, and clippers. So anything to where your hand is going to be on it for a period of time, a lot of time, and it's going to come into contact with your skin and stay there for a bit of time. Now, this is also another reason why if you have a cut on your hand, and let's say you're a cleaner, you work, as a cleaning person. If you've got a cut on your hand, you absolutely want to cover that. Honestly, if I'm doing anything in a public area with cleaning or serving people or I have to touch people often, it is always going to be a good course of action to put on gloves, because if you've got a cut or prolonged exposure with skin to skin contact and HPV is present, it is absolutely possible for you to pick that up, for it to invade your tissues, and for you then to have the HPV virus. Okay. So this is something that is possible. Um, you know, Kids pick it up at school all the time. If you have ever had an abnormal pap, yet you and your mate have only been with each other, this is probably how one of you picked it up. Maybe, your husband picked it up. Maybe he had friends and, would share baseball gloves, or would, go to the gym locker room and there was standing water, or had a cut on his foot and someone washed their genitalia in the locker room, and then he walked through that area with the cut on his foot where somebody was taking a shower and absorbed the virus that way. So again, we're not excluded just because we're not having sex before marriage. There's still other ways to get HPV. All right. You're only going to get it on your cervix if you have sex with someone, but you could still have it invade other tissues of your body through these other ways. Okay. So that is what a fomite is. Anything like that. Okay. Now, the other thing that was mentioned there for the non-sexual transmission of HPV was self-inoculation. Okay. So what is self-inoculation? Self-inoculation is touching one's eyes, nose, or mouth, um, any of those kind of membranes where a virus could then enter your body. So let's say, again, we'll take this illustration of, your husband who you feel, he's never been with anybody else. You both are, on this same path, you know, hey, maybe he was driving someone's car and they had warts on their hands, plantar's warts, which is the HPV virus, and then touched his eye or blew his nose or, bit his nails. Nail biting is a massive way that people get viruses. Okay. So these are other ways that you can get HPV, just like you can pick up any other bacteria or germ. You know, it's just a thing. Do we need to freak out about this? No, because overall, HPV is not harmful for most, but for some, it does turn deadly. There's lots of different strands. We'll go over that. But again, if we know that HPV now is the driving factor behind multiple cancers, why not just get the vaccine just to be safe when you're still coming into contact with surfaces and people, even if you're only having sex with one person or not having sex at all? Why not just play it safe? So, this is the mental shift that I have gone through over the years. And again, if you've ever had an abnormal pap, it's still worth getting the HPV vaccine because it's still going to help with any other HPV that you come into contact to out in the environment. For goodness sakes, we hope that you never have a mate that cheats. You may even change mates. Some people get divorces and then now they're having sex with someone else. You absolutely need to get the HPV vaccine in that case. And again, let's think about it this way. The shingles virus, right? Shingles is caused from when you get chicken pox as a young person. The virus lays dormant in the body for 20 years, comes out like in your 50s or 60s for some people as a very aggressive virus that attacks the nervous system and presents with lesions and nerve damage. And people have a really hard time with it. Okay. Now we have a shingles vaccine that prevents that. Okay. So for you to get the HPV vaccine, even if you've already had an abnormal pap, even if you've already had HPV, it's still worth it for you to get it because it may prevent you from getting cancer later on based on the HPV that you were exposed to earlier in your life. In a similar way that the shingles vaccine helps people, not to get shingles, the HPV could help you later on in life, if you get vaccinated, not to have it turn into a more aggressive disease like cancer. Okay, so these are the reasons. So that was the kind of like the thing that turned me around to know that, hey, I could actually do my future self some good by getting this, just because vaccines are very effective at preventing cancers before they start because they help kill the virus. Okay. It helps to prevent you from getting other viruses. And vaccines in general are very good because they stimulate the immune system and they are very good at preventing disease, in general. So, again, more reasons just to get the HPV vaccine. So, we covered self inoculation, we covered four mites. And again, this is on the non sexual HPV transmission and the role of vaccination for a better future. They are telling us that, you know, do these things and you can prevent some of these things from happening. So this is what I'm presenting. I hope this information is resonating with you. Okay. And again, this was from PubMed, National Institutes of Health. This information is also available on the CDC. Let me say this. You may have read something somewhere on naturallife.com or natural this or natural that. What you need to understand is that you gotta get into the collective of scientific research. This is not just a 10-year study. There's so much more information behind these studies from previous studies that are done, and our healthcare officials and our government has access to so much more data than one standalone person or one standalone doctor or one standalone chiropractor is going to have. Okay. Those people may have good information, but they are practicing chiropractics. They are not a scientist. Okay. They're not. So that's the thing. They don't have access to all the research. Okay. So these are the type of things you have to tell yourself when you're getting confused in the muck, because I'm like, well, this really nice doctor that I saw online said this. And, he's a chiropractor and he's got all this great information and people love him and what he says makes sense. Yes, but this is a standalone person. On the article that I just read to you from National Institutes of Health, there are 6 different people on it. These are all bioscientists, biological scientists, and their research has to be based upon pre-existing scientific research. So they can't just come on here on this government forum and say anything. Nobody can post here unless you've got a government clearance. Okay, so that's the thing. It's regulation. It's very important to understand these things. All right. So, let's move it along. Let's see. Did I touch on this? I want to make sure that I'm touching on everything. Now here's something else I want you guys to consider. For those of us, who belong to our special community here, we are oftentimes, when you think back during the pandemic, what was the body of research and everything that they followed, right? What did the branch follow? They followed the advice and research of government health agencies, which are National Institutes of Health, CDC, World Health Organization, Mayo Clinic, and the like. Okay, peer-reviewed institutions that have hundreds of years of scientific research behind them and don't promote one standalone person selling something. They're not selling anything. Okay. So that is how I was also able to change my view when I saw how the branch handled the coronavirus. I was like, wow, hey, they're not listening to one standalone doctor on the depths of YouTube. They're not listening to one group of people who sell essential oils and, don't subscribe to anything with certain health. They are following the governmental authorities. And so now that is, for the most part, everything that I'm going to do, everything that you're going to get here from me on the podcast is going to be the scientific approach. Do other people know things that are not official healthcare professionals and scientists? Sure, there's other good information out there. But when it comes to making decisions like this, you put yourself into a very risky category when you go against the biggest institution and the most credentialed. There's credentials here. Okay. Not anybody can just say or do this. To publish something, your article, these things that are published on these websites have to be reviewed time and time and time again. Okay. So it's a whole thing, guys. Okay. So I hope that kind of puts it into perspective when the branch gave us the direction on what we should do about the COVID vaccines. All of the information was from the government officials on health. It was not from, the little old lady who is a herbalist. You know what I'm saying? So again, you gotta just work through it that way. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about this other broader topic. So, viruses are one of the driving factors behind many cancers. Okay. So, there's different types of viruses. There's adenoviruses. There's another virus group that starts with a C. I'll get to that in a moment. I think. Is that on here? Yeah. It's not on this one. I lost that word. But anyway, so I'm going to go through some of the common viruses that you might not be aware of that do contribute to cancers. And this is from the American Cancer Society. Okay. And it's good to know this because then you yourself, maybe you have one or two of these viruses, who, okay, I've had two of these viruses. I've got an increased cancer risk. And that can kind of help you to say, hey, maybe I want to start working out. Maybe I want to start eating a little better to kind of offset some of these other risk factors that I've accumulated. We know that lifestyle cancers are the most common, and lifestyle cancers do include viral cancers, but it also includes, like, if you are a drug user, if you are morbidly obese, if you overindulge in alcohol, these contribute to all of that as well. But I wanted to touch on some of the main viruses that can actually lead to cancer. So, in this discussion, we're primarily talking about the human papilloma virus. There is actually 150 related viruses to the HPV virus. And many of them can be passed in many different ways. A lot of them, of course, are going to be most easily done through sex, but as we've learned through this discussion, that is not the only way. Okay. Now, some of the other ones, let's see here. Epstein-Barr virus is also part of that C group of viruses that is cancer inducing. Okay, hepatitis B virus and hepatitis C. If you've ever had those, you do have an increased risk for cancer, especially of the liver, as well as non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Okay, so be careful if are the type of person who occasionally you get cold sores, all of those things. Those are herpes viruses. Even if you've ever had chickenpox, all these things are in that group, and just by that you can have an increased risk. Okay, and remember, increased risk is all we're saying. All right. Let's move on. Of course, HIV is going to be one as well, that can actually lead to many different types of cancer, even increased risk for skin cancer if you have HIV, as well as lung cancer. Um, Human herpes virus 8 is also another one that is, can turn into cancer later on in life. Human T lymphotronic virus is another one that can contribute to cancer. Merkel cell polyomavirus. Polyomavirus. Yeah, it's hard to say. But that is actually another type of skin cancer that if you have this virus, it can affect the DNA of the cells and may lead to this type of cancer. Um, Here's another one that has some uncertain risks. They're not exactly sure, but Samian virus 40 is another one that can lead to cancers. Okay. So I want you to understand, sometimes people think getting sick is like, oh, whatever, you got that virus, no big deal. It is a big deal because a lot of these viruses, the way that they work is they have to invade the mitochondria of the cell and create a change. That's how they are able to replicate. And so when that happens, cellular damage does occur, which means you are at an increased risk of your body, once you reach a certain age, being like, oh man, I just can't hold this back anymore. And some of those mutations do start. So, again, this is just information to know. It's not really to freak you out because a lot of this we can't do anything about. Thankfully, we do have the HPV cancer vaccines now, HPV virus vaccines, excuse me. But these other viruses, there aren't really some of them, they don't have vaccines for. Hepatitis B, they do. I believe hepatitis A, they do. These are some of the childhood vaccinations that we do get. But hepatitis C, I don't think that there is one for that to date. I could be wrong about that one. But some of these other ones, there's no vaccine for some of these. So, it just gives you information on how powerful these vaccines can be. If we have them, get them. Like, let's say you're a mom and you declined all your hepatitis B vaccines, for your child. Well, if they ever get hepatitis, they've got an increased cancer risk. You know what I'm saying? And again, hepatitis, just like we learned at the outset with HPV, it could be spread in utero, in the womb, before the baby even comes out. That's how some people just get cold sores and some don't. They are just born like that. They get cold sores. Okay. So some of this stuff isn't anything you can point a finger at anybody and say, hey, you did this to me or whatever. Some of this is just like the cost of doing business, the cost of living. It comes with risk and there's nothing we could do about it. But what we can do is get some of these vaccines when they are available. Okay. So again, a virus must enter a living cell and take over the cell's machinery in order to reproduce and make more viruses. Some viruses do this by inserting their own DNA or RNA into that of the host cell. And then when the DNA or RNA affects the host cell's genes, it can push the cell towards becoming cancer, basically a mutation. Okay. So that is the thing, and that was from, again, American Cancer Society. That's a March 21, 2023 article. So, the role of viruses and how it can accumulate cancer risk. So, let's say, for example, you have the HPV virus, maybe you get over that, but, maybe that's still lingering around a little bit. Maybe you also have a form of hepatitis. Maybe you've had chickenpox. Maybe you are also morbidly obese, drink a lot, and smoke, or are sedentary, or eat a ton of fried foods. Now you see how the risk factors are starting to like stack up. And when you get too many, that's when those genetic mutations are going to occur. But for some people, it could just be one of the things that's enough to do it. And I think you guys may remember the story of a young girl. I think I talked about her a little bit in one of my episodes on the um new variants of STIs, the new like very strong STIs that are going around. And I got to meet this young lady. I did her hair and makeup for a photo shoot. I noticed that she had a port. I want to say she was 19 years old at the time. And her mom was one of the ones who refused for her to get the vaccine when she was, maybe 11, 12 years old. That's the general age now that they will give the first round of that. And she refused, kind of on, hey, we're a Christian, she's not going to be having sex. Anyway, long story short, she was having sex. She was having lots of sex. She was also smoking. None of these things that her parents were aware of. They were not aware. She was kind of basically, completely living a double life. And she would go to the doctor. She, "Oh, I'm not feeling well. I feel like I'm going to pass out," and all of these things. They did so many tests on her, and they never did a pap because they kept saying, "Well, she's not sexually active," and she never owned up to it. She never said she was. She would just lie and say, "Nope, I'm not sexually active." So she never got a pap. It was not until years later, by the time she's like 19 now, I think she may have passed away when she was like maybe 21, 22. And one doctor says, "Let's just do a pap just to be sure." Did the pap, and she said the doctors, and these are her words, that she wrote about. She did a whole like memoir online. She documented her cancer journey. And she said the doctor just closed her legs and cried because the doctor knew that it was too late. And so they did this emergency surgery. They removed as much as they could. They actually, and she showed me her scars, they cut her all the way from her chest down to her pelvic area, because at this point the cancer was literally on all of her organs, but it had came from her cervix, because it was cervical cancer from HPV virus. And they tried so much. She did all of the treatments. She did unfortunately lose her battle. She gave it her all. She even traveled internationally for treatments, for anything that she could do. But it was just unfortunately too late. And so this is just one instance where she just happened to sleep with the person who had a strong, HPV virus, and had one of those especially strong strands, and it was just too much for her. So again, sometimes it's about risk factors and getting cancers, but sometimes it's just going to be one situation that's unfortunate, and that's just it. You didn't have all the risk factors. You only had one, and it just did not work out. So it was very sad to see. I will never forget her story. Her information was online for quite some time. Her mom shared information about her life and everything. So it is a public case. Public, not a case, but a public. They've been public about what happened, with their daughter and everything. So again, even if you're saying, "I don't wanna get the HPV vaccine because, my kid isn't having sex," this is an example of you don't actually know what they're gonna do. So to deny them the vaccine, based on that, even if you are living your life, in harmony with Bible principles, kudos for that. Absolutely, we do that. We love that. But you just never know. Your kids are not with you 24/7 all day, every day. And while most of our kids in our community, they choose that life. They want to do that, but sometimes things happen and they don't. And so why not protect them in this way and everything. So, yeah, sorry for that one. I know that was kind of heavy, but it's just a thing. So let me update you with how I'm doing. As I said before, I have had my second dose. The first dose I really, really felt. It's kind of like when you get the COVID vaccine for the first time, you're like, "Ugh," I felt that. Not necessarily that it hurt in the arm, but you just feel the activity of the vaccination working in your body. You feel warm. I never spiked a fever. I just felt warm. I just felt a little bit tired the first go round. You really do feel that first one. The second one, I really did not feel any real noticeable change except for the injection, site. Like the second injection hurt a little bit more than the first, but it really wasn't bad. And then the same day, I still felt pretty energetic and I did not run warm. So yeah, that was something good. And running warm is just your body's immune system ramping up. And then what actually happens is over the coming weeks is really even though you're not having those symptoms, but your body's actually doing the work. So I suggest, always drinking lots of fluids, making sure you're eating your fruits and veggies every day, because when you get things like the vaccination, you are going to have, less risk of, complications if you got a healthy canvas kind of to begin with. Okay. So anything can happen. Can you have a side effect? Yes. For some people who have a very rare allergy to, oh, where was it? I'm gonna have to find that. It's not gluten. Let's see. I'll have to find that because I saw that. Yes, so if you have a rare yeast allergy, there are some different things that they can do for you. So just talk to your doctor about that. For most people, that's not going to be a problem, but that is on the CDC. That if you have, a documented yeast allergy, not wheat, but yeast specifically, then you just want to make your doctor aware of that first. But it's still probably going to be advisable for you to get the vaccine because the benefits are still probably going to outweigh the risks. So, the way that they give this vaccine, so if you're over the age of 25, they are going to recommend 3 doses instead of two. When you inoculate your children, they actually only get two if they are given the vaccine under the age of 15. And their bodies are so good at building lifelong immunity to HPV, and it's such a good idea to protect them early on because again, now they're getting into school, they're touching more people, they're out there in the community more, so it's a good way to protect them. This is also the time that kids start getting involved in sports and things like that, and the more types of activities like that you do, there's more risk of exposure for HPV. So again, that's just kind of how that goes. But if you're over the age of 25, they are going to give you 3 shots. Your first shot, and then your second shot will be about 2 months after that, and then your third shot will be about 6 months from there. So I still got a long way till I get my third shot. And that is just because they found that, if you're getting vaccinated at a little bit of an older age, um, you need a little bit more of a boost to really get the full immune protection, just because, your immune system, when you're young, it's like bam, it's popping. But when you start to get a little bit older, it just needs that extra boost. So that's why we get the 3 shots. So I cannot wait for my last one. Okay. My husband did get this as well, because I was like, hey, they just changed the age. We can get this and it's covered by insurance. You're getting it, because he's going to be out in the community. He's exposed to things. And, if I protect him, I'm also protecting myself, and vice versa. So I did one of those wifey things. I was like, hey, you're getting this. You are getting this, player. Okay. You about to get this shot. He's like, wait, what? I gotta get a shot? I thought I was done with those. Nah, you're not. You're getting another one. And whatever other shot they come out with, we getting that too. Okay. So let's move it along here. We covered this. Now, let me talk a little bit about some other things. I'm just going to cover some bases just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then we'll pop on to some new information that they're sharing about that possible correlation between HPV virus exposure and breast cancer. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I just wanted to share this one other article. And this one was just from Premier Health. It says, didn't get the HPV vaccine when you were a child or an adult? Not to worry. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has you covered. The FDA. The Gardasil 9 HPV vaccine is now approved to include men and women ages 27 to 45. I believe that this started in 2021. And if you notice, they have really been ramping up and trying to spread awareness about this to prevent people from possibly developing more cancers. So we just have to kind of make sure we're paying attention, okay? So originally it was approved for ages 9 to 26. I want to say that was back in, like, I don't know, maybe 2000, somewhere between 2000 and 2006. Most of us were, little then, so we didn't really know what was going on. But anyway, that actually only covered 4 strands. Now Gardasil 9 protects against 9 strands of HPV and their variants. So within that group of 9, there's like subvariants that it also covers in that. Okay. So again, more kudos for the HPV vaccine. All right. Um, All right, let's see here. Why get the HPV vaccine? According to the Centers of Disease Control, 14 million Americans become infected with HPV each year. And then remember, this is only what's reported, so it's more than that. About 4,000 women die from cervical cancer, or even some of those other cancers that were related. Here's what one doctor had to say. Her name is Melinda Ruff, MD. Vaccines in general are wonderful at preventing disease, says family physician Melinda Ruff. While cancer treatment has become increasingly advanced, she says it is more exciting to go 2 or 4 steps before cancer develops, so that you never have to do that treatment. And isn't that the truth? Who wants to go through chemo and all that stuff if we can prevent some of this, before it even develops? And she says, HPV strands, you still may be exposed to them down the road, and there's still other theoretical risks. Okay. Um, this was an interesting study. It says the FDA's approval for the expanded vaccine was used based on a study of 27 uh, of women 27 through age 45 years of age. So they studied women ages 25 to 45. They were vaccinated with the previous Gardasil. So that was just the one that only covered 4 strands. All right. And the vaccine was found to be 88% effective in preventing the cancers associated with HPV. And long-term follow-up data also contributed to these overall findings. So I want to say at the other page that I looked at that they had followed these women over a 10-year period. And as you know, most cancers are going to take 5 to 10 years to develop unless it's something very virulent, like kind of the situation I was telling you about with that young girl. But so again, a long-term study really, you just can't distribute that data. You can't discredit, I should say, excuse me, that data. She's again just goes on to say she really thinks it's a worthwhile vaccine. And she says that it's so impressive, the data that they've collected, and the side effects have been minimal. People 45 and under who've never received the HPV vaccine should consult their doctor and go ahead and get it. So they are recommending that if you are under the age of 45, you need to go back and get this. I've seen this on several places on National Institutes of Health that they are saying, and this is why now you've seen maybe some commercials on TV, maybe you've gotten some ads on your phone. Hey, guess what? This is not approved for people up to age 45. I believe you can also get this at the pharmacies now. So you might not even have to make a doctor's appointment for it, but just, go ahead and get it done because again, this is a preventative shot for future issues in a similar way to, as I mentioned before, the shingles shot. Okay, so if you get this shot, even if you've been exposed to HPV, there is some convincing evidence that this may help you long term in preventing any other disease, cancer, even possibly that is a cause from HPV, that is caused from the HPV virus. Okay. So that is why they have raised the age because they really have been able to see how protective this shot has been for folks. So that helped me to make my decision up. I was like, you know what, forget this. I'm going to go ahead and get this done. I'm going to get it done. And I'm glad that I did. Now, here's something else I'm going to share with you. And this is something that's like a personal one. So before I had the vaccine, sometimes I would have like tenderness in my cervix. And like most of us, I have had an abnormal pap, just one, which they say, like, I think the statistics are like 90% of women will have one abnormal pap in their life. Okay, which is fine. Um, and I would always have like little kind of pain in my cervix from time to time. It would feel like just a little sensitive, but I'm like, hey, well, I have had 2 kids, things change, whatever. Maybe it's just from that. No lie, since I got the HPV vaccine, I have not had tenderness in my cervix. So sometimes, like, if you sit down and like up in your cervix kind of hurts, after a while, I would have that. Um, I have not had that. And so that was very encouraging to me. It also kind of freaked me out a little bit because I was like, wow, what would that have looked like 5, 10 years from now if I never got the shot? Would that tenderness in my cervix have progressed into something else? You know what I mean? I had already had an abnormal pap, one, very early on. So that was very encouraging to me. I was like, hey, where else can I get a shot? Shoot me somewhere else with that. Please. Okay. So that was like for me, I don't know. And again, that pain is something that whenever you're looking at a research study, that is very rarely going to be something that is even discussed because pain is just so different from person to person, and it can mean something, but most of the time it means absolutely nothing for certain things. So it's like, that is not anywhere documented that you'll really find like, oh, women said that after they got the shot, they had less cervical pain, because that you can't measure that. So, but that's just me telling you after I got the shot, my personal experiences is those little twinges in my cervix that I used to have, I don't have. Okay. So I'm happy about that. Whatever that means in the good direction. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how they're now thinking that HPV can be linked with some breast cancers as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about more about vaccine hesitancy and then why in the United States, we're really vaccine hesitant on this one particular in comparison with other places. And I'm even going to share a graphic on that. Okay. So let me talk here about viruses and breast cancer. So this one is still like they're discovering this. So there were just a few studies on this. The most recent article I found was a 2022, oh excuse me, 2023. But I think we'll get more information in the future with how HPV might be a contributor for breast cancer, and we'll even know from the research that they have with the women who have gotten the HPV vaccine if it provided protection for them with breast cancer. Okay. So it says HPV may have links to breast cancer, but more evidence is necessary for researchers to understand the connection entirely. Studies have shown the presence of HPV in breast cancer cells, but the role that the virus plays in breast cancer is still unknown. That was just from another article that was just like a medical news column. But National Institutes of Health, again, had a little bit to say on this. The association between HPV and breast cancer has not yet been verified. There's still some conflicting data regarding the presence of HPV DNA in breast cancer cells. And they're just still, kind of diligently working to see what these links are. Let's see here. HPV infection is anticipated to be an early trigger in breast cancer carcinogenesis, followed by the accumulation of alterations over time, which is the hit and run mechanism. Okay. So through synergy with other environmental factors. So again, if you've, like I said before, if you've had HPV and you've got some other risk factors, the HPV can very much be a contributing factor to you developing cancer. So the studies are suggesting at this point. Again, this has not been definitively, answered yet, but that's what they're working on now. Okay. Um, but again, the data right now is still a little bit conflicting. And in the review of this article, they are analyzing the most up to date knowledge about the association of HPV and breast cancer. Furthermore, they summarize that the available original research, some of which was published in 2010, um, on its complexity and inconsistency of the available results, together with the relatively low prevalence of HPV infections, requires extensive research with much larger studies, and exact and unified diagnostic methods are required to better understand the role of HPV in breast carcinogenesis. So, let's see here, the type of development of breast cancer. So again, they kind of touch on some of the other things we talked about. The development of breast cancer can be contributed to, possibly some of these viral factors, but also advanced age, high body mass index or obesity, tobacco use, physical inactivity, a high fat diet, early menarche, or early menstruation, late age of first full term pregnancy, shorter breastfeeding periods, the use of hormonal replacement therapy or oral contraceptives, breast density, and family history of breast cancer. So, those are interesting, guys. I mean, those are all things that they are saying here plainly that could be attributed factors for developing breast cancer. Okay. So, again, National Institutes of Health, you can just, go on there and take a look at some of these. It's a lot of reading. Y'all know me, I don't have a life. I'd be sitting over here, what can I figure out now? What they said on there today, you know? Um, but for me, sometimes it's a little bit fun and interesting, and it helps me to kind of change my outlook. Okay. So again, I can't wait to see what else they find out about this. In my mind, it's absolutely plausible just because, as we learned before, viruses, whenever you get a virus, they do have to enter a cell and cause some cellular damage. So, in my mind, just based on that, it is plausible that these could be additional risk factors for developing cancer. All these different viruses, the HPV virus, and I think other viruses too, probably hepatitis, all of those, just because of the damage that is done to the cell by the virus. So just information for you to know. Okay. Um, let me make sure I did not miss anything else. Let's see. Now, here was something else from the CDC. I want to say this was a 2023 article. How well do these vaccines work according to the CDC? HPV vaccination works extremely well. This was a newer article. So now it's up to 90%. HPV vaccine has the potential to prevent more than 90% of HPV attributable cancers. Since HPV vaccination was first recommended in 2006, I knew it was somewhere around then. And that's the thing, when things are new, when these like shots first come out, we like, oh, I don't know, what is it? What's in it? Um, these HPV types that cause most HPV cancers and genital warts have dropped 88%, okay, among teen girls and 81% among young adult women. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that frighten us about vaccines and some of the things that frighten me about vaccines before I really, kind of educated myself. And this is not a one day thing, guys. Like, I really kind of started this, like, again, when I first was getting married years and years ago. And then, over the years, you just kind of dabble at it, you dabble at it. But I really started doing a lot of research like before I became a mom and when I was like a very new, brand new mom with a newborn. Because, you have to vaccinate them. So I was like, whoa, okay, what are all these vaccines and what's in them and how do they work? So from there was also around the time that I started getting serious about my educational journey in health, and then went on to become a nutritional health coach and all that. So that is the path. So I'm saying that to say I'm not just like, oh, saying this out of nowhere. Like, this is all stuff that has taken me a long time to arrive at, and it's not me. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, all I've been sitting up here doing is basically reading from National Institutes of Health and the CDC and reviewing their information. If you don't like it, if you don't agree, write to the publishers of the articles, write to those scientists and tell them they're wrong, even though they've got all the data in front of them. Write to them. Don't come at me, girl. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay. But another thing that people are hesitant about with vaccines is um, they don't understand what are in them. So you hear all these things that vaccines contain formaldehydes and they contain all of these preservatives and all of these things. That is absolutely true. Well, let me say this. That is partly true. Okay. Vaccines, some of them do contain formaldehydes. Why? Again, you could take a journey over to these websites. It's nice that our government does have a lot of transparency on these things, and you can find out that these vaccinations have formaldehyde in them so that the contents of the vaccine, be it, if there is an actual dead virus in there, which is not done as often more, the viruses now are doing more of the mRNA thing where they don't even actually have a live virus in them, but there are still components, biological components in them that must be preserved, and they've got to be insanely sterile. So, like, when you get a shot, there is a way that they have to be transferred and stored. And if that shot doesn't make it from one point to the next in the right amount of time, sometimes they just have to throw out the whole lot because this is a whole thing. It's not like this is somebody selling candy out of the back of their truck. This is highly regulated. Okay. So again, the formaldehyde is in there in microscopic little teeny tiny amounts to prevent any corruption of the contents. And you want that because if that thing starts to go rancid and that stuff gets out of hand inside that little vial, you could get very sick. So you want the formaldehydes in there. And what is formaldehyde? Formaldehydes are alcohols. Okay. So again, think periodic table, think, all of those things. Out Formaldehydes are an alcohol. It is like the strongest type of alcohol you can possibly do. And one popular thing that contains formaldehyde, as I also shared on my Instagram, is tequila. Alcohols have formaldehyde content. They have formaldehyde in them. It is the natural process that happens when you create an alcohol to drink. That's part of the process. Even wines have formaldehyde content. Okay, so if you're drinking alcohol, but you won't get a vaccine, you're really doing yourself a disservice because you're still getting formaldehyde. And that's the main thing that people say, oh, you're getting formaldehyde, you're getting metals. You are still getting metals even if you take a multivitamin. Copper is a metal, it is in a multivitamin. Okay. So again, these are trace amounts that you're getting for a very specific reason that has a ton of science behind it. There's a lot of math to calculate how much of what should be in there. And now what I noticed when I got my vaccine, and even like nowadays when my kids have gotten vaccines, all of these things are pre-measured out from the manufacturing facility. Not too often, unless you go to like a smaller pharmacy, do you have doctors really like drawing up every single shot, like, like pulling it, inserting the syringe in the vial and pulling it out. It's already pre-done, so that takes out a lot of the human error. When these things are manufactured in the vial they're going to be administered in at the manufacturing facility and then shipped, then it's much less chance that you're going to get the wrong dosage or whatever. Okay, so again, remember that. So just think of when you have to go get a shot, that this is just a little bit of tequila going in your arm is all, and it is just to preserve the contents of the shot so that you don't get sick from it. And again, it's very effective. Formaldehyde keeps things preserved for years and years and years and years. Okay, it is very effective. So again, it's just a little tequila in your arm. Maybe there might be some metals in there. I did not particularly research that for the HPV vaccine in particular. I don't believe it does. But again, even if it did, these are things that are so small and minute. And again, the benefits of this are going to, of course, outweigh the risk. Now, you do have certain things like, sometimes people do have allergies. That is absolutely a thing. You could be allergic to, one of the components of a shot. But I encourage you to think this way, talk it over with your healthcare professional. Um, Most of the time they're just going to have you wait a little bit longer once you have your vaccination, and they can administer any drugs to counteract any allergic reaction right there on the spot for you. So that is, something else to consider. And then also, we're allergic to cats, and we're allergic to moles, and we're allergic to all of these things. Now those are much milder allergies, but a lot of people do take allergy medications for those, and those also come with side effects. So, in a similar way, when you're getting your HPV vaccine, you might have some allergy to it, but guess what? The allergy is going to run its course, and you're going to be over it. And that's it. Just like it would be with any other allergy, the benefits still definitely outweigh the risk. So, I really like to explain that one on formaldehyde because that was one that really like scared me when I was looking at vaccinations for my children. I was like, oh, this little baby, and some of these shots may have formaldehyde in them. And oh my goodness, is it going to hurt my baby? And then I started thinking about myself. So I understand the mindset. I'm not, I'm trying to help you to make your decision, and I understand the fears because we just live in such a crazy wonky world, and it is easy to be, afraid of some of these things when you just don't know. But once I learned that I was drinking formaldehyde every time I had an alcoholic beverage, and then there were also little small amounts of formaldehydes in some vaccines, I was like, well, if I'm drinking alcohol and living to tell the tale, I can definitely have a vaccine that has a little formaldehyde in it, and I'm just going to go with it. And, for most people, I dare say 90% of people, you're not going to have any problem with that little bit of tequila formaldehyde going into your arm. Okay. Um, let me see here. Is there anything else that I wanted to cover? It's been a while since I've done one of these like deep dives on this, so I just want to make sure that I'm being really thorough. Oh, yes, there was one other thing. Now let's talk about for us in this country and our vaccine hesitancy. Guys, we are lagging behind. These other countries are knocking us out of the water, and we're kind of looking dumb here in the US because we are not getting vaccinated. I want you to, if you're on podcast, you can pop over and take a look at this graphic as well. So this was actually one from 2015. I did read in some of the more recent articles that the resistance against the HPV vaccine has gone down in the United States. More people are embracing it, but we are still lagging behind most of the other countries. And I could not find a graphic. This was the most current graphic that I could find, and this graphic is from the CDC. And it says the HPV vaccine 3-dose coverage among girls in high income countries. So if you look at Australia, 71.2% of Australian girls have been vaccinated with their 3 doses of HPV vaccine. If you look at the United Kingdom, 60.4% of United Kingdom girls have been vaccinated against the HPV virus. Now, the United States, as of 2015, was only at 33.4% of its girls vaccinated against the HPV virus. Okay. And sadly, again, that young girl that I mentioned earlier, was in the other side of it where she, wasn't. And many of us who, maybe those of us who, like myself, have just gotten it like way, past the age now that it's available to us. We contributed to this negative statistic. We contributed to this by not getting it. Maybe we didn't know about it. Maybe we were just resistant. We were too scared to get it. But regardless, I mean, numbers are numbers. And during that time in 2015, I was not vaccinated against HPV. So I was one of the people dragging our country's number down. You know so again, 33.4% in the United States. And then think about it this way, guys. We always complain, oh, in the United States, cancer rates are so high. Well, look at the numbers. Only 33% of us are partaking in cancer preventative treatment of HPV vaccine. So, of course, our cancer rates are higher. Australia, their cancer rates are much lower. Why? Just in the case of the HPV vaccine alone, they blow us out of the water. 71.2% of them have been vaccinated with all 3 doses. So again, we doing a lot of this stuff to ourselves. A lot of these other countries, when you really talk to people from other countries or when you travel, you learn that other people in other countries, if their country is one that is what they call, and I hate using this word, but a first world country where things are pretty good, everybody's got access to healthcare, all of that, they have much more trust in their government and in healthcare than Americans do. Americans are very resistant about everything, and I'm saying that including my former self in that, and I don't want to be like that anymore, because the data that is available now proves that my former reasoning was wrong. So it's okay to admit you're wrong, guys. And if you made the same error, it's okay to admit you were wrong and go get the shot. Say, oh, I didn't know, girl. I thought I was doing something good. Let me go get this shot real quick. No harm done. Well, maybe no harm done, but you know what I mean. So we're really lagging behind. And this is not the only graphic like this that you could find on the United States. We are notorious for refusing these life-saving treatments that are preventative treatments like HPV vaccinations and like many of the other vaccinations and other treatments available. Um, when I was going through this journey, I recall one lady, and she was a doctor in India, and you should have saw those Indian women just running and lining up by the droves to get the shot. Most of them, and that was when they changed the age. So they also increased the age, in India. That was a worldwide thing for the most part, where, everyone up to 45 could get it. So when that rollout happened in India a few months ago, they were lining up by the droves. They understand the power of scientific research and scientific study, and they're not turning to, you know, the one person, on a dark corner of the internet spewing their ideologies, their own personal ideologies. They're much better at listening to things from trusted governmental health sources. And so again, I hear these complaints all the time. I hear people, oh, cancer is so high in our country. United States is the worst for cancer. Well, we refuse vaccinations that prevent cancer, and we don't walk a lot, and we eat a lot of stuff we're not supposed to. So again, we have so much freedom in this country, but it's almost getting to the point where it's like too much freedom for our own good. You know what I'm saying? Like other places, like, okay, well, if you refuse all these, you're not even going to have a job. Okay, well, I got no choice. That's the government looking out for those people. But we have some of those freedoms here. But, the people who don't get it, and who can't read between the lines and really see what's happening around them, they're going to get left out. And like I said, I don't want to be like that. I don't want that for you, or, who's listening, or anybody. So again, I hope this information helps. This statistic was kind of like, wow, it was sobering. Like, man, everybody, we're like at half of the United Kingdom. And when you talk to someone from another country, and I remember I was talking to a girl once about this, and she was from the UK. I want to say, I don't know, I was like newly married or whatever, and we were talking about this. We were like down in DC doing like some work, and the conversation just kind of turned to this, and she was just kind of looking at me like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why would you not get it? Are you out of your mind? Like these scientists have done all this work so you could get this vaccine." But still, in my naivete, oh, I don't know. So yeah, guys, check this graph out, and hopefully this helps you, figure out some stuff that you want to do for you and your family. Okay. So as always, y'all, if you have a moment, please follow me on Instagram. I would like that very much. I'm not very active there as I used to be. Excuse me. Instagram just drives me crazy, but when I post, and you will get updates and things there. Also, if you're watching here on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you could subscribe, if you could subscribe on podcast and subscribe on YouTube, I would very much appreciate it. These things really do encourage me when I see people subscribing and liking the content. I'm like, oh yes, this is why I do this. So, all right, ladies. Well, hey, I hope that you have found this information to be informative. I hope that it really resonates with you. And I hope that you see that this is coming from a place of love. I've been on that same journey of confusion. I feel that I've finally come out of it, and I'm on the right side of things. And if you have any questions, maybe something I did not cover here, and you just want to have a private conversation about it, maybe you have some other issues going on and you want to kind of know more about my personal experience, and you want to just kind of pick my brain as someone who's gotten the shot as a full-on adult past the initial age, as a part of this new rollout to get everybody vaccinated who's under the age of 45, then please pick my brain, DM me. I will answer your questions. I am here for you. All right, ladies. Well, hey, that is it for Work It Lady today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Your sanity while we do it.
Nutrition is your new addiction.